welcome back to Endangered Species Spotlight. This week we are talking about the rusty-patched bumblebee. The rusty-patched bumblebee is native to North America, mainly the eastern side and mainly in the US, but it does extend into some Canadian provinces, particularly Ontario and Quebec. It does have a much wider range within the US, going down all the way almost to Florida and extending west all the way almost to Iowa. However, the populations have severely decreased in the past few years due to multiple factors. The most major of that being due to habitat loss and industrialization, reducing the native habitat of these bees, but there's also other things that have effects such as pesticides, them not being the intended target but are still affected by most pesticides. Another factor affecting them is introduced pathogens from cultivated bumblebee species. There are multiple bumblebee species that are cultivated for use in agriculture, in greenhouses and fields and orchards and all that, but sometimes they get out and spread into the wild population, and in doing so they can transmit any diseases that they had to vulnerable populations, such as the rusty-patched bumblebee, that don't have a natural resistance to those pathogens. So a cultivated bumblebee will get out and mix with the rusty-patched bumblebee population and transmit a pathogen. That rusty-patched bumblebee will then transmit it to more and more, and it will start to spread, and since they have no immunity, they can't protect themselves against it, and that will cause a essentially pandemic or something between the rusty-patched bumblebees. In addition to being important on their own, just for them not to go extinct, the rusty-patched bumblebee is actually very important for the environment and agriculture as well. They're very important pollinators of both agricultural crops that are like outside and not in greenhouses or anything, as well as native plants that, due to their specific evolution, maybe will not be suited for pollination by other bees, like introduced bumble or honeybees. Many plants have evolved specifically to be pollinated by specific native bees and other pollinators that have evolved in the same area, so without those specific pollinators, they can't really reproduce as intended. And so they heavily rely on specific pollinators for their specific pollination and reproduction. And so if those pollinators go extinct, then it's likely that those native plants that have evolved with those pollinators will also. Now, there are conservation efforts going on to save the rusty-patched bumblebee. However, if you live in areas that have populations of these, there are some things that you can do yourself to boost the population. Namely, if you see them, don't kill them. That is like the main thing, and also try to, if you can, avoid pesticide use and use more natural alternatives if possible that are less harmful for the environment and the bees. Additionally, do some research about what plants are native to your area and try to plant more native plants and plant bee-friendly flowers that act as a food and habitat source for these bees. If you're able to, plant bee-friendly flowers and just provide a safe space for the bees to be able to live without many risks as possible.